I'm Nick, and I'm in a little bit of a conundrum when it comes to the Lian Li Lancool 217 Infinity. When I reviewed this case in May of this year, I said that this was Lian Li's best case ever. So why would I need to review this case all over again when the only difference between this case and the original one we reviewed is the front panel and no more wood? So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is I'm going to build a PC and you're going to hang out with me while I do it. And I'm going to talk about this case and all of its little quirks. As you're about to find out, I'm going to be using almost the same hardware with this build as I did with the original Lancool 217 review that we did all of those months ago. I think the only difference is going to be the cooler and the CPU. We're going from a 9950X to a 9950X 3D. I think with the purposes of testing thermals with this, I'm not going to use fans on the bottom of this case, whereas with the original 217 review, we used the included fans, mainly for curiosity, because I just want to know what the deal is with these default fans and just the fans on the cooler that we install with this. So one of the standout things about this case when we first reviewed it was the build quality. This is one of the best built Lian Li cases to date, and the price doesn't really reflect that because I think it's almost too good. Not only that, the compatibility in this case is ridiculous. We've got full back connector support. We've got support for ITX up to SSI EEB. You can move this plate, you can rotate it, or you can completely remove it. You can have a motherboard that goes from here all the way to here because they still have rubber grommets to feed all of the cables through, which makes this one of the most versatile cases ever. As well as that, if you didn't want to use that GPU support bracket, you can remove that so you can have the full clearance for your motherboard too. So you've got so many options when it comes to this case for motherboards. And I did show me putting in a massive motherboard just to test the fitment in the initial review. Other than the front panel being physically different with that infinity mirror, you'll also notice that the fan mounting options on the front bracket are completely different. You cannot change them. They have a fixed position for both of these front fans, and that is really so they line up with those speaker grills, well, rather the fan grills at the front of the case. That was one of the things that I commented on when we saw this at Computex, that turning this into an RGB speaker. This thing, I don't care if you don't like RGB. Me, you know me, I'm not into it. But this looks freaking insane in person. This is what makes this different, is these fan positions are static and you cannot move them at all. With saying all of that, the top panel is still exactly the same. It just pops off. The whole frame at the top is removable too, which makes it easier for radiator installation because we're going to be installing a 360mm liquid cooler. What else would we do in here? I mean, we can air cool if we really want, but this is me. I'm not going to be doing that. Very easy to remove. 2 screws, yank it up, and away we go. All right, here's the motherboard and everything that I prepared earlier. This is the Gigabyte X870 Aorus Stealth Ice. We've used this board many times, and the reason for using this board is pretty obvious. This is a back connector motherboard, and this is really what this case is designed to do, except nice back connector motherboards. And it makes it a lot easier for me building when I have to make these videos, and it kind of makes it easier for cable management, tearing the system down, etc., etc. Plus, it has the bonus of looking really, really freaking cool because you won't be able to see most of the cables in this build. And you know me, guys, I like stuff to be super duper clean. We can put the heatsink back on to cover up all of that untidiness. For the power supply, I wanted to do something a little bit different here. Typically, we'd use just a normal power supply. I wanted to try out this new Lian Li RS1200G. The main difference with this power supply as compared to other power supplies is where the power connector is here, it can be rotated to a different orientation. The 24-pin power cables are also connected with the modular connector on the side of the power supply, making for some very interesting mounting options for your power supply, especially with the Lancool 217, considering it has both non-standard and standard power supply mounting options. Let's do something a little bit wacky with this. I think what I want to do is use the non-standard power supply mounting with the 217, rotate this so the power cable is on the inside of the case rather than it being on the side where you'd plug in that extension cable. For this orientation to work, you will need to do something that maybe you might not be comfortable with, but you'd have to make the intake fan for the power supply be inside the case and not intake air from the outside of the case, which is perfectly fine in a case like this because of its design. What I mean by that is when we slide the power supply into the case, it will draw air in from here rather than from underneath here, which again is fine because the entire inside of this case is open. You'll also notice that I rotated the power connector to be on the inside of the case, meaning there's no cable running on this side of this bar because of the design of this case. Like I mentioned, it has both standard and non-standard power supply mounting options. This video is kind of turning into a review, but not really. It's like a, hey, I had this idea and some thoughts on how to build a PC. You might want to experiment too. The strangest thing about this orientation is very obvious. With this rotatable power connector, you can see that the extension cable is on the inside of the case. It's not here. And the 24-pin power connector for the modular power cable is still there. And the power supply has another 24-pin power connector on the other side. So you can install this power supply in basically any orientation you like. Now you've got full access to all of the modular power connectors. I kind of like that the 24-pin modular connector is here anyway, because typically the run for the cable would come out this way and then straight up. It just makes for cleaner cable management, especially with these back connector builds as well. Removing that top panel was easy, but putting it back in with your radiator and your cooling is just as easy, provided feeding the cables through isn't going to be an absolute pain in the butt, which it's not with this case. So watch me do all of this in real time. I'm also kind of doing this blind, so please forgive me. Right, so those cables are through. Put the fan cables through. Like I said, real time, no cuts. Absolute mayhem because I'm filming around the camera. And I can't see what I'm doing. All right, here we go. Oh, that's really annoying. That's just come unplugged. All right, trying to do this real time, but maybe I won't. Line you up. See, it's not all easy every time when you're filming. Okay, that's it. And then we'll just whiz the screws up. I think that was only a minute or so. There you go. 1 minute and 39 seconds. All right, everybody's favorite part, that's thermal paste and installing the cooler itself to the CPU. Just gonna do a little X here. As I always say with thermal paste application, it's really user preference. And the reality is with a cooler like this, watch what happens when you mount it. The pattern's basically gonna mean absolutely nothing because with this cooler, you kind of mount it offset and then you slide and lock it into place and it smears all of your work anyway. So it doesn't make any difference with the pattern because this cooler is gonna spread it on its own anyway. That sounds really rude when I hear that back in my head. All right, time to whiz them up. For the GPU, I'm using the same GPU that I used when we originally reviewed the 217. It is the RTX 5090 Master from Aorus. That's right, Aorus, not Aorus, straight up Aorus. Rightio. And now we can adjust the GPU support bracket, which you can see right here, to take the load off. We can hold it up from the back. I like to whiz it up with the screwdriver just to hold it into place, and we're good to go. Cable management in the 217, as I already showed in our original review, is really, really good. There's not much to really talk about. It has tie downs and Velcro included for everything. It's got these little plastic cable clips to help manage the EPS power cables. And the smart people out there know that I probably spent around 10 seconds on cable management because I just put the cables where they're supposed to go. Yeah, nothing to it. Cable management is almost a non-issue anymore with Lian Li cases, which I can definitely get behind. Making this, again, I'm gonna say it, this is easily Lian Li's best case to date, but it does have a couple features that we haven't talked about in regards to those infinity fans at the front. But let's put all the panels back on before we dive into any of that, because I don't want to confuse you. Yeah. Oh, almost dropped the glass. That's what happens when we're riffing from the dome. All right, bang. What? Come on. Let me bang you. Let me bang you in. There we go. And back panel. Bottom panel in. I'm really liking how clean that's looking. And lastly, tempered glass. Alrighty, let's take a look at the thermals with the Lancool 217 Infinity. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals are quite good, and they're pretty close to what we saw with the non-Infinity version. So nothing really to report here. As I mentioned when we first reviewed the original version of the 217, the thermals are great, and this is one of Lian Li's best cases that they've made to date. The obvious differences being with the mirror finish on the front of this case. But let's talk a little bit more about that, because what this does is kind of adopts a different type of design language that we kind of see with Lian Li fans and puts it into the form of applying it to their case. The fan grills themselves are essentially speaker grills. They are removable, so if you want to clean them, you can just pop them off and clean them, and away you go. One other interesting feature with the case, which I haven't mentioned till now, is the fans themselves have the wireless module with them. So if you're using a wireless L-Connect controller in your case, you can hold down the M1 button and then it switches the fans to the wireless mode so you can control it in L-Connect. So you technically don't need a controller, but if you don't use that mode, it does have full motherboard pass-through for RGB. What I did in this, because I was using this cooler has a controller with it, so I just made it all wireless L-Connect. There's nothing really to report here other than the front of the case being different, and it is the same build quality, kind of repeating myself here, but if you're interested in the 217 Infinity, I kind of like the way it looks, and the price isn't obscene either. It's $129 for the white version or $125 for the black version. And that's it. It's, yeah, not anything that we haven't seen from Lian Li before, considering it's the 217 with an infinity mirror, 2 new fans, and no wood. Really not worth reviewing other than just adding some thoughts to what already was a fantastic case from Lian Li.